world.
Stepping it like that.
The Ransom. That's the name of a major series of articles published by the New York Times detailing how Haiti became one of the poorest countries in the world, while bankers in France and the United States made a fortune. The story dates back to the early 19th century. In 1804, the enslaved people of Haiti rose up, leading a rebellion against French colonial rule, founding the world's first black republic. Under military threat from France in 1825, Haiti agreed to pay reparations to France for lost so-called property, including enslaved people that French owners lost in the rebellion.
So now,
France threatened to invade Haiti and reimpose slavery if Haiti did not agree to a staggering amount in reparations. 150 million francs, 30 times Haiti's annual revenue.
The camera's not going to be flipped on
Haiti began taking out loans from French banks, leading to an economic crisis that continues through to this day. The New York Times estimates Haiti paid the equivalent of what's now $560 million to France over the next 7 decades. The true economic cost to Haiti is estimated to be an astounding $115 billion. And that only tells a part of the story. In 1880, a French bank established Haiti's first national bank, essentially putting France in control of Haiti's treasury. That bank, Crédit Industriel et Commercial, used some of its massive profits to help finance the Eiffel Tower. The bank's current owner has just launched an investigation into its dealings with Haiti and its role in what's called the ecosystem of colonialism. That bank, CIC. The Times series also looks at the U.S. military occupation of Haiti that lasted from 1915 to 1934. A key backer of the U.S. occupation was the National City Bank of New York, the predecessor of Citibank. Former U.S. diplomat Patrick Gaspard, who now heads the Center for American Progress, has called on Citigroup to pay reparations to Haiti. Gaspard wrote on Twitter, "A silent scream has been in throats for decades about the role U.S. played in depleting Haiti. No one would listen. Finally, some truths," he said. Over the years, Haitian demands for reparations have been repeatedly shut down, sometimes with force. France's former ambassador to Haiti, Thierry Boucard, admitted to the New York Times that France and the United States effectively orchestrated the 2004 coup that ousted Haiti's first democratically elected president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Boucard said one benefit of the coup was that it ended Aristide's campaign demanding France pay financial reparations to Haiti. To talk more about Haiti, the devastating impact of colonialism in this massive series in the New York Times, we're joined by 2 guests. Weston Lee Alsanat is a Haitian-American professor at Fordham University, where he teaches courses on the Atlantic slave trade, the American abolition movement, and Afro-Caribbean history. Gerald Horn also joins us. He's professor of history and African American studies at the University of Houston, author of many books, including Confronting Black Jacobins, the U.S., the Haitian Revolution, and the Origins of the Dominican Republic. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Professor Alsanat, let's begin with you. So this series has come out in the New York Times to both criticism and praise. It's come out in both Creole and in English. That's a first for the New York Times. Can you explain the significance of what many are calling revelations, at least to the general public, but certainly people in Haiti have been alleging for centuries. Not only alleging, but of course having proof of this.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me today. I'm glad to be here in conversation with you. So first, let me start by saying that a great acknowledgement to the many reporters and producers who put this very special issue together, and to have given it a front time exposure, it will mean a lot. Not really for Haitians per se, because the facts that are being revealed throughout the report are very well known, even to the most illiterate Haitian, and even to the youngest Haitian growing up. In fact, given the level of underdevelopment that is prevalent in Haiti today, one knows, at least the Haitian people knows, that this could have only been the legacy of an external force, rather of their own making. So I think the significance of the piece will be that it exposes the rest of the world to a knowledge that actually has existed for over 100 years and shares multiple partners, both in the private sector with regards to the financial industry, as well as the United States government, Germany, Great Britain, and most certainly and most influential France, having played a role in imposing the debt that in many ways will explain Haiti's poverty today. So I welcome the piece. I think it's great in terms of the many research that it brought together, both from academic literature that had already existed, as well as new revelations that are coming up. But in terms of calling it revelations, that would be a misnomer. I myself have written it very extensively on the subject. Many other fellow academics, historians have written about it. There have been movements over the decades to get the United States, France, and the other parties responsible for this to get them to some accountability. And I believe a large reason why this never got the fair sort of ear of listening that it should have gotten is because it's coming from Haitians, who many people view as sort of the Africans of the Western Hemisphere, but which is an identity that Haitians proudly wear proudly for reasons that reasonably make sense for it in terms of the freedom that they fought and established for all Black people.
Yeah, I'd like to bring in Professor Gerald Horne to the conversation, another historian who has covered the issue of colonialism, imperialism, and slavery throughout the Americas for decades. I too had the same feeling that a lot of this is only new to people who haven't paid attention to the history of the Western Hemisphere over the last several hundred years. I'm wondering your reaction to the piece, because the Times really is delving into history much more than news. I think the most interesting aspect of it was the particular individuals in France and the institutions that directly benefited from the ransom that Haiti was forced to pay. But largely, this is history that is known by people who know any part of the history of Latin America and of the Western Hemisphere. So I'm wondering your reaction to the piece as a historian who studied this carefully.
Well, first of all, I would urge and encourage the New York Times to follow through with their point that they have uncovered new documents by putting these documents online so that other historians can take advantage of their excavations, and or secondly, placing them at the New York Times archive, which I believe has been cited at the New York Public Library. But I think that this story also is of significance and of moment for us in the United States, for we in the United States, because there has been this myth that has been created that the United States and the Haitian Revolution were twins, even though we know, as I begin my book on the Haitian Revolution, George Washington, the founding father of this country, was quite nervous about the eruption in Haiti in August 1791. And this was understandable because the Haitian Revolution, culminating in 1804, led to a general crisis of the entire slave system in the Americas that could only be resolved with its collapse. Therefore, the United States was probably second to France in being an antagonist of the Haitian people. From their point of view, this was a reaction to the fact that many of the slave revolts in the United States had Haitian fingerprints all over them. I'm speaking of Gabriel's revolt in Virginia in 1800, the revolt in Louisiana circa 1811, Denmark Vesey about a decade later in South Carolina. In fact, Vesey had sailed in and out of Haiti before that eruption in Charleston, South Carolina. And then, culminating this hostility to Haiti, there is substantial evidence to suggest that when the island that we refer to as Hispaniola, was split in 1844 with the secession from Haiti of what became the Dominican Republic, that this was an early success for U.S. covert operations. So this story in the New York Times is of significance for we in the United States. Hopefully, it will cause us to re-examine the history of this country and move away from the propaganda point that somehow the United States was an abolitionist republic when actually it was the foremost slaveholders republic.
And I'm wondering also if it wouldn't have been worthwhile for the New York Times to do another piece on its own coverage of Haiti over the past 100 years or so. I'm thinking back, for instance, during the first coup against President Aristide, when there were numerous articles in the New York Times about how Aristide was considered to be mentally unstable and erratic in his behavior, all of it fed to it by intelligence sources. And even the Times' coverage, perhaps, of the U.S. occupation, that long occupation in the early 20th century. The Times seems to be willing to go after France and the U.S., but really doesn't look at its own role in creating the narrative of Haiti as a dysfunctional country. I wonder what you think about that, Gerald.
Well, you're absolutely correct. Obviously, criticism should be accompanied by self-criticism, and there is much work to be done in that sphere by the New York Times. You mentioned the occupation, 1915 to 1934. The New York Times did not necessarily stress and emphasize in their coverage the mass opposition to the U.S. occupation, particularly by Black Americans, particularly by a founder of the NAACP, speaking of W.E.B. Du Bois, who, as you know, his ancestral roots were in fact on the island, and he led a vigorous campaign against this murderous and bloodthirsty occupation that in some ways involved the reassertion of unpaid labor, the so-called corvée, as it was called euphemistically in Haiti. And the New York Times would do well to re-examine its own coverage, because hopefully that would improve today's coverage.
Well, I want to go back to 2004. Juan just referred to this. France's former ambassador to Haiti has admitted France and the United States effectively orchestrated the 2004 coup that overthrew Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, Haiti's first democratically elected president. The former French ambassador, Thierry Boucard, told the New York Times one benefit of the coup was that it ended Aristide's campaign demanding France pay reparations to Haiti. I want to turn to an interview we did with Kim Ives of Haiti Liberté. This was right after President Aristide was put on a plane and sent to the Central African Republic. This was what Kim Ives described.
This is a U.S.-French-led operation. In fact, didn't Aristide say he holds the French ambassador to Haiti as well responsible for his kidnapping and wants to bring charges?
Yes, the French were involved in all this pressure and, in fact, were in some ways leading the charge. This was a purely U.S.-French operation.
And of course, France, probably more than the United States, had more to lose from Aristide continuing in the presidency, since he was beginning to lay claim to reparations from France for the period of colonialism and slavery.
Well, this is precisely it. You had the restitution for $21.7 billion, which was on the table. And we saw a lot of rivalries where put aside to get Aristide out. Between the ruling groups in Haiti, you have the comprador bourgeoisie and the big landowners, who generally are constantly squabbling throughout Haitian history for power. They put aside their differences to get together, which we see with Andy Apped representing the bourgeoisie, and Guy Philippe and Jodel Champlain, more the Macoute wing. And we saw the France and the US, who have also been sort of vying, put aside their differences. So you saw this unity come between rivals against Aristide, because he represented the people and because he was a representative of popular will in Haiti.
So just to be clear, this is mid-March 2004 that Kim Ives was speaking. Right after that, Democracy Now!, I flew to the Central African Republic on a small plane covering a group of African-American activists and politicians, including Randall Robinson of Trans-Africa, as well as Congressmember Maxine Waters, who went to the Central African Republic to retrieve the Aristides and then brought them back to the Western Hemisphere, as the U.S. government was saying, how dare you bring them to this hemisphere, to which Randall Robinson responded, whose hemisphere? They eventually brought them to Haiti, and the Aristides then went into exile in South Africa for years before they eventually went back to Haiti, where they are today. I'd like to get response, starting with Professor Horn and then Professor Alsenat, about the significance of these coups, whether we're talking about Aristide in the early 90s or again in 2004, the coups against them and what that meant for this country. I mean, no precedent again would demand reparations.
Well, the reparations question is obviously key. Keep in mind that what makes the United States unique is that the slave owners were expropriated. Their property and the bodies of enslaved Africans was taken without compensation. That helped to give rise to the terrorism of the Ku Klux Klan. In Haiti, as we've been discussing, the Haitians were obligated to pay back, believe it or not, the enslavers. And likewise, if you look at the British possessions, so-called Jamaica, Barbados, etc., you had London compensate the enslavers, and by some measures, that total was not paid off until just a few years ago. And so this question of reparations is quite key. And also quite key is the role of Haiti in helping to ignite this entire process of abolition, leading to capital loss, not least in the United States of America. The enslaving class and their descendants have a very long memory. They have not forgotten Haiti's role. That's why they continue to punish Haiti for having the temerity to rise up against slavery. And even today, they continue to punish Haiti because they see Haiti as a haven for low-wage labor. U.S. baseballs and the U.S. national pastime are largely manufactured by cheap labor in Haiti. So there is still much to sort out with regard to this entire controversy.
And Professor Alsenat, if you could also respond right through today to the U.S. diplomat Patrick Gaspard, who now runs Center for American Progress, demanding Citibank launch an investigation, and the whole issue of reparations, whether you could see it actually being real, given the devastation of Haiti.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I think I want to quickly go back to what was asked with regards to the New York Times. Let me remind our audience that it was in 2010, not just days after an earthquake had devastated the country and killed upwards of 200,000 and more people, that the New York Times provided a platform for one of its columnists, David Brooks, to say some of the most racist things that I've ever read in the New York Times about Haiti. So if we are going to also give the New York Times the credit for what is a phenomenal job about talking on this issue, they should also start by apologizing for what Mr. Brooks had said then, which, let me quote real quick. Haiti, like most of the world's poorest nations, suffers from a complex web of progress-resistant cultural influences. There is the influence of the voodoo religion, which spreads the message that life is capricious and planning futile. There are high levels of social mistrust. Responsibility is often not internalized. Child rearing practices often involve neglect in the early years and harsh retribution when kids hit 9 or 10. We're all supposed to politely respect each other's cultures, but some cultures are more progress resistant than others, and a horrible tragedy was just exacerbated by one of them. So I call on the New York Times to both acknowledge the statements of racist demagoguery on its pages from Mr. David Brooks. As anyone can judge for themselves, they can go back and look at the op-ed and its pseudo-intellectual anthropologizing of Haitians. So that's one. And with regards to Mr. Gaspar, I believe he actually served in the Obama administration. And most people should know that President Obama, being himself the first Black African-American president of the United States, actually never made an official visit to the first Black republic in the world, the very nation without which Mr. Obama would have not assumed the role of leading a society like the United States as he had. So I would like to know from Mr. Gaspar, why is that the administration never actually took the very official position that he is taking right now with regards to Haitian poverty and underdevelopment, and the explicit role that the United States, France, Canada, and Germany have played in all of that. And then lastly, I just want to respond to your question with regards to just the immensity of the debt and the destructive legacy it has had for Haiti. The tragedy of all of this is that even once this debt is paid, if it were to ever be paid, which I, like Professor Horn, I believe there are parties that are invested in never actually realizing that possibility. Even if that debt were to be paid, we are already talking about decades of gaps in development that were missed in the process because of where the money was going. Something like upwards to 80% of all Haitian expenditures up until the early part of the 20th century was going to financing the debt. And the fact that American firms from Wall Street in cahoots with the federal government in terms of the State Department, the Navy, and you have names like General Smedley Butler, who actually wrote about his role as a Marines in Haiti and how he secured the interests of the financial corporate groups, as well as working with the State Department to make sure that Haiti becomes a haven for capitalism, as he said. And also, we can even see FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself had been Secretary of the Navy upon the time that Haiti was invaded and becoming a protectorate, essentially, of the United States. And he, too, had professed to actually amending the Haitian Constitution to take out a very revolutionary constitutional clause that had banned white male from owning land in Haiti. Among the first constitutional clauses that the occupation targeted was that, and therefore opened the country up to internal meddling by the international powers. But lastly, I just want to also note the fact that with regards to what you had said about the Eiffel Tower, Credit Industrial, which is now a part of Credit Agricole, one of the largest banks in the world, I think among the 10th largest banks in the world, having funded the building of the Eiffel Tower, which is now this massive monument to French industrial progress. That it was happening at a moment in which the United States, France, Germany, and parts of Western Europe were developing rapidly from the capital that they were extracting from many of their former colonies or their current colonies. So imagine what would the history of development in Haiti be today if at the same time that the world is undergoing industrial transformations, the likes of which we see today in the form of the Eiffel Tower? What if that money that was taken from Haiti, financing French infrastructure, was financing Haitian infrastructure instead? The fact of the matter is there is no progress-resistant genes that somehow Haitians are born with. Perhaps someone like David Brooks was born with that, with some progress-resistant gene, as he is unable to fathom that Haitians can take care of themselves. But the truth goes to show where the receipts are in terms of why we know Haiti is in the position that it is today.
Well, I'd like to ask Gerald Horne. The bank asked.
Meni peuple haïtien, petit point ferme seul. Mais toute vérité a sous tambour, li parle sur website là pour ça blanc fait non, ça Guy Philippe cause non, ça nous fait pour la France dans Eiffel Tower que professeur a dit si tout comme ça était là pour infrastructure dans Haïti, est-ce que nous tapons dans pauvreté ça? C'est ça fait qu'on a faut mettre tête nous ensemble pour nous retirer gang yo, pour nous retirer CBT, pour nous muscader, pour nous former gouvernement pas nous que peuple a quoi pour nous demander l'argent, 119 milliards de dollars peuple haïtien. Mais toute preuve là que médias cachés, nous tout Valérie Saint-Louis, tout Abdelgelin, tout le monde qui est dans les médias, ou comprendre qui sérieux, yo caché nous pour ne pas jamais rien peuple haïtien, yo toujours diviser nous, toujours fait cob. C'est qu'on y a là pour jeunesse là pour nous mettre nous, pour nous prendre parler nous, pour nous muscader, là finir pour nous sauver pays nous, pour nous prendre l'argent nous même blanc, et puis prophète là parle gain plus l'argent de bon Dieu pour nous porter dans le pays. Mais preuve là c'est pas mentir lié. Dans la démocratie nord, même bah nous toute vidéo pour nous tendre li, si nous pas parler anglais, n'a fait traduire pour nous. Parce que c'est ça toute bagaille dit. Que New York Times là, dans toute investigation, pareil pour l'aider nous. C'est pays pour nous faire, pour nous programmer, pour nous joindre un gouvernement qui a pris responsabilité l'argent. C'est Jean-Ernest Muscadet pour nous mettre comme on dessaline, pour aider nous retirer gang yo sur nous. On prend pour 4 ans pour là, nous avons fait constitution nous, dans le groupe peuple là, nous pas servir avec anciens qui trahissent nous, qui fait pas jamais gagner de l'argent. Mais tout bagaille là devant peuple là, yo pas jamais baouli parce que les médias cachent pour Guy Philippe qui mettait là avec tout blanc ça pour jeter Aristide pour Aristide pas commander l'argent qu'on a dit 119 milliards de dollars pour la France payer nous pour nous déraper peuple là parce que nous faisons déraper qu'on y a là tout ça on fait ça l'argent paye nous à l'argent force ancêtre qui travaille qui paye l'argent sans ça. Qu'on a fort nous joindre bac pour nous déraper en va me joindre l'argent papa pour nos peuple haïtiens. Nous tendez marché prophète là, laguer média pour nous faire pays, laguer média. Tout en ça tout fait sacrifice, son sacrifice parce que média pas rien à faire pour. Tout saisir, tout pendant hétéro. Laguer média pour nous faire pays, s'ouvre le pour après et le pas durer parce que m'a pas acheter tout média net. Que bon Dieu, mais non, peuple haïtien, God bless you. Time for un changement, peuple haïtien. Et c'est tu jeune nous camper pour gagner même aller en prison pour battre nos pays, nous, pour nous joindre l'argent, nous. Et tout autant que terroriste, cap vivre dans le pays, ou pas qu'à joindre l'argent, ça, tout autant pas un gouvernement établi qui monté par peuple, là. Qui est bon, ben nous, peuple haïtien. Son gros l'argent, les cap bagaille, faut nous bataille pour lui. Parce que c'est pas lui. Et si on t'a ban intérêt, t'as plus d'argent parce que, regardez ça nous fait pour la France. Ça. Et nous même si pas non, c'est la fait, c'est nous qui fait. C'est l'argent nous qui fait. Christophe qui fait. Et nous même tout bagarre américain fait, tout c'est l'argent nous. Il fait nous payer intérêt, il fait nous payer un paquet de copes. Bon, dans le bon américain, dans l'argent papa, moi je 10 trillions dans réparation pour vous, dans l'argent papa, dans l'américain, ou même, comme français, à nous venir. 119 milliards de dollars que le vaut qu'on y a. Que bon Dieu, ben nous, peuple haïtien, que nous tendons. La guerre média, C'est sacrifice ça pour faire, pour un GPO. Tout autant dans Berto, dans Foucault, dans médias, pas grand rien vérité cap décoché pour vous. Mais toute histoire là, moi t'épelle, moi baoul. Ou parle dans la vidéo, si nous ne comprenons pas, n'a fait Teriel traduit pour nous. Il faut Teriel font bagage tout qu'on y a. Faut traduire tout ça, yo dit dans la, pour comprendre. Et New York Times, si nous avons papier, il faut Teriel venir baou, pour l'écrire là, pour qu'on ait qui ça, yo qu'a fait pour nous. Pour nous joindre l'argent, nous, si nous mettons pays nous en forme, en gouvernement établi par le peuple haïtien, Jean-Ernest Muscadet, président d'Haïti, pour 4 ans. Nous mettons dans la condition qu'on a, c'est 4 ans. Parce qu'on a 20 ans, on a 5 présidents pour qu'on séparer. Il faut l'apprendre séparer pour petit peuple là, qui vient, mon bagage. Tout le temps, vieux bon monsieur, tout petit vacarme, ça vient dire, si peuple là, il n'y a pas fait rien pour petit peuple. Parce que yo tout là-dedans. Ni bon monsieur, ni Beto, ni Jimmy, ni Madame Sayen, ni Salik, ni pas d'Haïti, yo tout dans conspiration pour pas contre vérité. Mais vérité, dans mon peuple haïtien, l'argent là, attend nous. Son gouvernement pour nous prendre. Miscadet, n'a retiré gang yo, n'a fait une élection législative propre pour mettre le monde qui présente au peuple là. Et puis qu'on a un bon pouvoir peuple là, dans la constitution qu'il a fait. 2 partis politiques. Éliminer toute vacarme ça, tout parti politique ça. Yo pas qu'à toucher l'argent ça, yo pas gagner aucun candidat pour me faire magouille avec nous. Que bon Dieu ben non peuple haïtien. Mais preuve là devant, pas rien menti dans ça dans preuve sous tambour. God bless, peace and love. Partagez vidéo, peuple haïtien. Que bon Dieu ben non. Là ça arrive trop loin. Il arrive trop loin peuple là. Faut prendre souffle. Faut prendre souffle peuple là, et pas possible. Que bon Dieu ben non encore. Prends souffle vous-même. Gonaï a déjà paré. Depuis qu'on arrive paré, tout pays a paré. Pour nous prendre ces bêtises, pour nous retirer ingérence blanc, pour ne pas prendre 5 000 personnes qui viennent là, pour venir voler le pays. Blanc vole trop, il fait toute souffrance. Camper pour payer au peuple haïtien. Il est là pour nous camper, pour de salines à tout en cette eau. Marchons unis, marchons unis. Dans nos rangs, plus de traite, plus de médias traitent dans nos rangs. C'est les médias qui traitent, qui travaillent au peuple là. Mais tout le peuple là. Mais il n'y a pas jamais tout ça. Mais le peuple là. Et me tout ça, c'est sacrifice la média pour un GPU au peuple haïtien, diaspora, la média pour un GPU. Ou après, là nous commençons, prendre l'Ixon, ou après. Après ça, qu'on a, c'est pour la guerre, parce que yo travaille à tout Guy Philippe. Toute vérité là, coup d'État qui est-ce qui fait le 2004, et pour qui ça yo fait, et c'est Guy Philippe qui fait. Et c'est Guy Philippe qui fait que nous prenons Matéli à tout Jovenel pour 4 milliards de dollars passer là pour grand monsieur. Que mon Dieu, ben non, papa, ici. God bless, peace and love. Partagez la vidéo.